This may just be the match of the year, and we're not exaggerating. Two undefeated champions go head-to-head, and only one will be the victor. These are some of the best boxers currently active in the world, both with impressive records. This is the ultimate middleweight showdown. Here's everything you need to know leading up to this fight. Keeping the Benavidez family name. David Benavidez is none other than the son of Jose Benavidez Sr. and the brother of Jose Benavidez Jr., who has previously shaken up the welterweight division. Born in 1996, David, along with his brother, was destined to take up professional boxing at some point in their lives. Being a champion was a dream ever since we were little kids, Jose Jr. said in a recent interview. It means a lot because when people say you can't do something, you can do whatever you want as long as you want it, as long as you're motivated and you put in the hard work. The senior Jose Benavidez had been a boxer himself. By the time the boys were born, he had taken up being a boxing coach rather seriously. So his first experience in training began with them. However, while Jose Jr. went on to craft a 200-fight amateur fighting experience by the time David was 12, he was battling childhood obesity. It took 2 years and a lot of effort for him to come to terms with discipline and set himself back on track. This reduced amateur opportunities for him by a great deal, and he came off with a rather short amateur record of 15-0. Nevertheless, his father always trained both him and his junior in a strict and hard professional style, leaving no ambiguity as to where David was supposed to go. Senior also believed that young amateur boxers pick up a lot of bad habits. Once you go into the amateurs, you pick up a lot of bad habits. You're not really throwing your punches all the way. You kind of slap. That's how he felt. So my dad thought it would be a good idea to practice that pro style. With that, David Benavidez began his pro career in 2013 at the age of 16, with his first match being against Erasmo Mendoza from Mexico, who was also making his debut. Mendoza was knocked out in the first round. Senior's training had paid off so much that David would go on to score similar victories all the way till 2017, with knockouts after knockouts and TKOs after TKOs. He was already one of the strongest and most dominant welterweight fighters from among the younger fighters. Notable bouts include ones with Roland Williams in 2015, the then 16-win undefeated Francine Tetu in 2016, and Rogelio Medina Luna in 2017, who received a particularly brutal beatdown. The fight against Luna was for the number 2 spot on the WBC super middleweight rankings, the penultimate step to becoming world champion. And in a series of twists of fate that involved the previous contenders dropping out for various reasons, he got his world championship shot. This was his famous fight against the Romanian Ronald Gurville in 2017. The fight was close, and David seemed to struggle with conditioning and was knocked down in the final round. At times, he seemed to really be in trouble, but he always managed to roll back the tide with accurate counterpunching and hard body shots. It thus came down to a close split decision victory from the judges, with one judge even scoring against David. He had finally fulfilled his childhood dream of becoming the world champion, and since it was a split decision victory, Gurville demanded a rematch to settle it once and for all. For their rematch, Senior got him to work on his conditioning and stamina to cover any and all weaknesses. The result? Ronald Gurville suffers a decisive unanimous decision defeat. The only place to go from there was up, and David would end up outdoing his brother in the pro leagues via dominating knockout victories against Anthony Durrell and Kyrone Davis over the next few years. His last fight was against none other than Caleb Plant. It was the most emotional fight yet for him, as both men traded insults and verbal jabs at each other. The risk was heavy, as Plant is still a dangerous opponent going into 2024. But David kept his title going through all 12 rounds, ending it in a unanimous decision victory. We're just glad the fight was ended on a positive note between the two of them. "I want to shout out Caleb Plant," David said. "I know there was a lot said between us, but in the end, we settled this like men. He's a hell of a fighter. I'm happy we gave the fans the best rivalry of the year of the last 5 years. I'm just very happy. We were never going to settle it before we got into the ring, but we got into the ring and settled it like men. I took his hardest shots, and he took my hardest shots. And the good thing is that we're still standing at the end of the day, and we can go back to our families." 27-0, and a dream to eventually fight and defeat none other than Canelo Alvarez is what David's going in with. The Raging Bull of Providence. Born to immigrants from Cape Verde in 1988, Demetrius Andrade began boxing in 1994 at the age of 6. His father owned a boxing gym, and the focus was initially on Demetrius' older brother. Eventually, he started picking up the fundamentals of boxing himself as he began to take a keen interest. His dad decided to put him in the ring against an opponent. He lost, and it was probably one of the most important fights ever in his life. Because from that day forth, I was like, I'm never gonna lose again, he says, shaking a fist in the air for emphasis. He had taken his lumps and it had deterred him. To this day, the loss is burned into his memory. But he was destined to have a big amateur resume, and it took him to winning the United States Amateur Boxing Championships in 2005, and repeated it in 2006, when he also won the National Golden Gloves. He again won the National Golden Gloves in 2007, and by this time, he was starting to gain attention, even as an amateur. The highlight of his amateur career came in 2008, when he represented the United States in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. Already having become a rather skilled fighter, he was one of the favorites in line to win a gold medal for the USA. However, he was stopped in his tracks by Korean veteran Kim Jung-ju in what turned out to be his final amateur outing at the Workers' Gymnasium in Beijing. With that, he went pro that same year as an Olympian, stopping Patrick Cape within 2 rounds to score a TKO victory, quite similarly to what David Benavidez would experience years later. Andrade went on to wipe the opposition out with TKO and unanimous decision victories and climb his way to the near top of the division, coming face-to-face with the Armenian Baines Martirosyan in 2013 to win the WBO World Super Welterweight belt. And just as it was with Benavidez, it was a split decision victory, the hardest fight Andrade had to fight until then. He then went on to defend it the next year against tough contender Brian Rose, who he knocked down twice in rounds 1 and 3, and punished until he gave up a TKO victory. But what's better than being a world champion? Well, you can be a world champion in more than one division. That's what happened when he beat the formidable Jack Colque to snatch the WBA Super Welterweight title from him. His chance at a second title was close and hard fought, on the way to a split decision victory as Colque managed to keep the pressure on him. And in the very next year, he fought the then undefeated Walter Cantandacqua to win the WBO World Middleweight belt. It's no exaggeration when we say that Demetrius Andrade is one of the most accomplished and dominant boxers still active. With 3 world title belts, he's definitely going to be the most difficult challenge ever faced by David Benavidez. His last fight against Desmond Nicholson in January 2023 was a clean-cut unanimous decision victory, proving that he still has what it takes to punish his upcoming young opponent. Fighters compared. David Benavidez is known for his aggressive, crowd-pleasing style, which is courtesy of the Benavidez school. His Mexican boxing heritage shines through, as he employs an energetic and highly aggressive forward-attacking style. His opponents frequently get broken down by his sheer onslaught, as he unloads on them with the sheer volume of punches. Jose Benavidez Sr. has always emphasized the importance of accurate jabs, which David uses in order to prevent his opponents from getting a chance to rest. Gradually overcoming his weaknesses relating to conditioning and stamina, he's ironclad and one of the most dangerous boxers in his weight class. Speaking of his weight class, his sheer size allows him yet another advantage that has proven to be insurmountable to many. Lastly, it would appear that nothing short of reaching the absolute possible apex would satisfy David, as he sets out to continue making his father proud. This resolve was truly put to the test by his conditioning coach. I remember seeing David spar with Latif Coyote when he was 15. The dad instilled old-school mental toughness in these boys, conditioning coach Alex Ariza said. I try to break every fighter. I want them comfortable being uncomfortable. But these guys won't say anything. They twit until they drown, run until they passed out. With the sheer amount of accolades possessed by his upcoming opponent, it's clear that David has a long way to go still. Speaking of Demetrius Andrade, he's almost a perfect foil, as he has an imposing blend of characteristics: skill, speed, athleticism, an awkward style, and a southpaw stance. These traits have made him largely untouchable, as his opponents simply kept coming up short and trying to figure him out. The only boxers to have ever come close would probably be Jay Colque and Baines Martirosyan. He leverages his stance to really do a number on his opponents, as he applies pressure and devastating attacks when his opponents least expect it. Those who pick Andrade to win are confident that his combination of technical skills, power, and ring IQ make him a different beast for Benavidez, and that the young hothead may come up short after all. Again, it's hard to understate how much of an exciting match this is going to be. Who are you siding with? The upstart or the incumbent? Leave us a like and subscribe if you agree with our assessment of this showdown. We'll see you again when the dust settles on the canvas.